Thank you for that, Chris. I really enjoyed that the bottle said harmful or fatal as if it was a choice. Our next speaker, it's very international tonight. Our next speaker, Orla, she was born in Ireland. She's now living in Palmerston North. She's a mum and a wife, and she works full-time at Massey as a wellbeing coordinator.
Yes, my name is Orla. Can you hear me okay? A little more. Okay. So I strongly believe that with every ending, there is space created for an amazing new beginning. And my new beginning, or the second volume of my life, as I like to refer to it as, started back in 2002 in a counselling session. So I'd reached a pretty low, dark point in my life. And as I sat there with this counsellor sitting across from me, he asked, where do you want to be in 12 months' time, and who with? And it really was, I suppose, the spark that ignited me to create a lot of change and open a brand new chapter in my life. Going way back to the very, very late 70s, I was born and raised in a little town called Monkstown in County Cork in Ireland. Just imagine the almost stereotypical Irish town. It's stone walls, 17th century castle in ruins, Protestant church at one end, Catholic church at the other. Pretty just regular Irish town. We got to grow up there, very free lifestyle, always outdoors with our hundreds of cousins and neighbours. Also a town where everybody knew everyone, and too well almost, and way too many pubs per capita with the 1,500 population that we had. Pretty carefree life growing up despite pretty tough financial times in that pre-Celtic Tiger Ireland. Our parents never put us in any situation where we were aware of what they might have been going through. We never wanted for anything, grew up happy. Living in a small town as a teenager brings its own challenges. You get bored, you do really dumb things that maybe you shouldn't do. But we came out the other end. Most of us survived it pretty much unscathed. And by the age of 20, finished studying, I was ready to take on the world, leave the nest, finally. So I did that in the form of a 3-month stint in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, in the USA. And it was a world away from little old Monkstown in County Cork. Looking back now, I do have to ask myself how the heck we all came out of there alive. One of the funnier brushes with danger we had was when we decided to go night swimming. And then later discovered that the waters we were swimming in were shark infested. And yes, shark feed at night time. And we were fresh out of Ireland, the land of very little sun, and I honestly think we may have even glowed in the dark. So, yes, interesting time. By the time I made it back to Ireland, I was not in a space where I was going to settle back home with mum and dad, although my older siblings were still there, typical Irish family. And so very quickly had my head turned by a slightly older man. He was in a full-time job, a real job. He had a car, he had a house, all the things through the eyes of a 20-year-old who was probably a little bit too materialistic in what was now a booming Irish economy. Thought, yeah, this is life, this is happiness. So off we went very early on in our relationship, moved to Dublin, and I was set, all was good. So my father has always been a figure in my life that has encouraged me. He's driven me to be adventurous, to travel, to study, to do well in life, to be independent and empowered. And it absolutely broke my heart when in the year 2000, I had to go back home and announce to him and my mother that I was pregnant and unmarried. Cast your mind back to the typical Irish town where everybody knows everybody, and it's typical Catholic ways as well. Not a good place to be. So in that moment, I pretty much on my father's face could tell that all the hopes and dreams that he'd had for me for the future disappeared completely. That was it for him. It was all over. And his first question was actually, when are you getting married? To which I replied, I'm not, and thankfully didn't go through with that. The 9 months or so that followed were interesting ones. Our grandmother, who was the matriarch of our family, of a very, very large Irish family, passed away. I tried to keep my sense of adventure, did a trip to New York. This was early 2001. Stood on top of the Twin Towers with no idea what was to come later that year. Came back to Ireland, settled down, ready to be a mom. When I was about 7 months pregnant, the gym that I worked in at the time, one of our members collapsed, and myself and one of my colleagues tried to resuscitate him, unsuccessfully, unfortunately. And later on, that would have had a much bigger effect on me than I realised at the time. So in July of that year, my beautiful baby girl was born, and I really loved being a mum, despite the fact that when I went out in public, and although I was 22, I looked about 16. I don't think Irish people age as fast. Again, the lack of sunshine might have something to do with it. So anytime I was out in public, people would look to my ring finger, look at my age, and I'd get disapproving looks. So bad one day that I was in a shopping mall, and no joking, and a nun in full habit. If anyone's ever witnessed that, it can be quite a dominating presence they have, stood in my way with hands on hips and shook her head at me, to which I replied with a gesture that I won't do on stage because we have to keep it clean. That's probably the fighting Irish spirit that just doesn't ever dull. So I found myself in a place where my life had changed drastically. I was now a mother, a very young one, in a country that didn't really like people to be unmarried and have children. My life had changed. My partner's life was still pretty much the same pre-fatherhood, and things were not going well. So we decided life in the big city needs to come to an end and move to a county called Limerick, which was much closer to my hometown. Things didn't improve much there. They just continued to sink lower and lower, and I found myself being really anxious, suffering from panic attacks, and I think just the combination of the year of losing people close to me, seeing and realising how precious and fragile life is, and bringing life into the world, and the combination of the two just left me absolutely terrified. So we moved back to Cork to be closer to my family. The relationship with my daughter's father soon wrapped up and came to an end, and all of the negativity and just those harsh, horrible feelings that were with it disappeared as well. My amazing mother helped so that I could get back to work, and I returned to the workforce for the first time in 2 years. Career was always an important thing to me, and I was really passionate about what I did in the health and well-being industry. And life was good. Things started to look up. Everything was going well. This was where I'd wanted to be. That moment that I sat with the counsellor and thought about where I wanted to be in 12 months' time, that was pretty much it. Surrounded by family, friends, in a much better space. And then things got really interesting. One day while I was standing watch over the swimming pool in the place that I was working, and this vision comes out of the changing room doors, much more tanned and muscular than your average Irish bloke. Apologies if there's any Irish people in the room. And then he opened his mouth and this Kiwi accent came out, and if swooning is still a thing, that's embarrassingly, so that's what I was doing. Absolutely swept away with this guy. And we got to know each other, discovered we had the same likes, the same interests, the same passions. He was kind, caring, just like my family did. He was encouraging of me to be empowered and convincing me that I could be a mom and I could also have a career and do the things that I wanted to do and take on new challenges. And so we fell in love for real this time. And a year later, bittersweet moment for my parents when we told them that we were going to come to New Zealand for a year. And while they wanted us to go and take that new challenge, obviously they didn't want us to be that far away either. We literally could not have gone any further from Ireland. And Mike, my husband, had to recover from an injury. It was just 1 year, that's all it was going to be. And he did a really good job of selling New Zealand to me. We were coming to this country that was way warmer than Ireland. The sun was always shining, hardly ever have rain. Yeah. And his grandparents had offered us their beautiful beach house that we could live in for free until we found our feet. So I was just blown away. Amazing, let's go. Onto the plane, landed in Wellington. It was really wet and really windy. I thought, okay, this isn't quite what I imagined. And then you can imagine my further surprise when we pulled up to this real typical, cute but really typical Kiwi batch in Foxton Beach. Void of any insulation, sand on the inside of the windowsills because it just rips up from the sand dunes. And I thought, wow, okay. When I rang home in tears, my father's response was, this is exactly what you need. It'll ground you. You post-Celtic Tiger children are just too obsessed with things and the stuff in life that isn't important. You're starting from basics. It's what you need. And now in hindsight, it probably was what I needed. Gave me a much better appreciation for the proper things in life, the things that we should focus on. So we built things up over the years. We bought our first home. Time started ticking by. It's now been 14 years that 1 year has turned into. He convinced me to stay. In that 14 years, we've gotten married. We've added 2 more beautiful daughters to our family, and we just continue to work together, supporting each other and working in areas that we're both passionate about, that where we have the options and the chance to increase the happiness and the well-being of people in our community. And so always remember that with every ending comes an opening for an amazing new beginning. Thank you.